I can remember when my cousin first started wanting to go offshore fishing. We were freshwater striper fishermen. We had been doing that for years, and he decided, well, I think what led to it was we started saltwater striper fishing. We was going out of Oregon Inlet, Rudy Inlet, catching the ocean stripers, migratory stripers in the winter. That was kind of a segue to our offshore excursions. He ended up going with the Trophy 1903, which the Trophy 1903 at the time had the most freeboard. That boat has 38 inches of freeboard, 19-degree dead rise, so it has the dead rise and freeboard to be offshore worthy, but it's only 20 feet. But at the time, that boat had more dead rise and freeboard than any other 20-foot boat. You know, when it comes to whether or not you should go offshore fishing, everything is subjective. Everybody has their own opinions on it. And back when we did it, Facebook wasn't really big yet, and YouTube wasn't big yet. I mean, there was some information on YouTube, but not a whole lot. So we read Saltwater Magazine, Saltwater Sportsman Magazine, and we'd go to seminars. Went to see George Pavaramo, and my cousin ordered some DVDs on, it was actually George Pavaramo, just showing how to fish for different species, So he bought the boat. I went with him, and we ended up getting a pretty good deal on the boat. It was an 03 model and had good compression. I mean, it was, the boat hadn't been used much at all. It was in like new condition. Had a Merc saltwater on it. Great outboard. Those outboards, those XR Mercuries are really good outboards. And we started going offshore fishing. And, we learned as much as we could without actually getting hands-on with it. We would go all over, and there comes a point once you start, you're doing all this research and you're getting all this, you're on all these forums, and you're asking people, you're trying to get advice. There comes a point when you just have to go do it. You just have to learn from experience. We made a lot of mistakes. We got ourselves in hairy situations. We got stuck on the sandbar in Oregon Inlet. There were times when we almost hit the bridge, the bottom bridge there. We were, making turns in rough conditions when we shouldn't have been, and we've took waves broadside. We've gotten caught in storms, but we learned. We learned that sometimes when they're stacked, you can throttle up and get on top of them, and it's not so bad. We learned that if you need to make a turn, wait till you're in the trough, make the turn real quick. We learned to stay on the backs of the waves. We learned to work that throttle. When you're in rough conditions, you got to be on the throttle like 100% of the time. Not everybody can have a 1-ton truck to tow their 36-foot yellowfin. Sometimes we have to get the best that we can get and what's feasible for you personally. And that's what we did. Yes, we sacrificed length, but we had the freeboard and the dead rise. We had the flare. The boat done really well. I mean, it was scary sometimes. It was rough, but that's offshore fishing. You have to love it. I mean, you have to be, you have to know that there's a risk involved. You try to do everything you can to negate as many risks as possible, but there will be a time, if you offshore fish enough, that you're gonna get caught in something. A little pop-up thunderstorm, something's gonna happen. You're gonna have boat trouble out there. I mean, it's just a list of things that could go wrong out there. A lot of ways to die out there. And we did it. I was never really hardcore into offshore fishing. It was a passion that my cousin had. you know, we fished together for years, a lot. And so, you know, I went with him every time he went, I was there. You know, we would go out for blackfin tuna, we'd go out for mahi, we'd go chase the bull dolphins out of Hatteras in May, we'd go out of Florida, Tampa Bay, Pensacola, the Grand Strand, Murrells Inlet, left out of Holden, we left out of Charleston. We would just go anywhere and everywhere, and we did this for several years. A lot of it, you know, we put a lot of wear and tear on that boat. I mean, this is just a little single engine boat. We were going out of you know, 50 to 100 miles out of Florida. You know, we were going out 50 plus miles out of Hatteras. We were going out, you know, 80 miles out of Murrells Inlet. We were just constantly going like way offshore, and it was fun. You know, it was extremely fun. It was, there's nothing like being out there and having that freedom out in the blue water, out just in the middle of the freaking ocean. I think a lot of it wasn't that we were brave. I think a lot of it was just ignorance. I think we would just go do things, you know, YOLO, you know. And as you get older, you kind of don't want to take those risks anymore. I mean, especially if in a vessel like I have now. You know, I bought the boat from my cousin. I had a Scout. I sold it so I could buy this boat. We blew the motor up leaving out of Morehead City. We were going kite fishing for blackfin, and we got about 5 miles out, and the middle port cylinder locked up. Eventually you have to, we used to call it getting the ink out of your face. You know, you can only read and study and ask so many questions, and you can only gather so much knowledge from books and the internet and people. You know, there comes a time when you actually have to go put your hands on it, and that's when you start to learn. Just when you start to get experience, and you know, you will make mistakes. You will put yourself in danger. That's why you see like most of your offshore fishermen are rich dudes. You know, they want a boat that is, they don't want to go out in anything less than a 35-foot vessel. And it's understandable. It's understandable because it is risky. Anything can happen out there. My friend and I, he had a cobia 194, you know, and to an unexperienced boat person, they would look at that boat and be like, you know, that's an offshore boat. That boat would, but it wasn't. It didn't have an incredible amount of dead rise. It was a bay boat, so there was plenty of room in it, you know, and when you get room, you're sacrificing dead rise. You know, the more dead rise you got, the less deck space you're gonna have. So his boat was more like this, so you had a lot more room than my boat, but it didn't have as much freeboard. So we're out there in this 18-foot cobia 194, and we go out to the Frying Pan Tower. We left out of Lockwood Folly. His brother-in-law was with us. It was me and Ryan Spivey and his brother-in-law Matt. So we go out. Actually, we went out near shore fishing for cobia, I think it was, and we could actually see the cobia. We were casting to them. We were pulling baits through them. Couldn't get hooked up with them. The chomper blues were mixed in with the cobia that day. These were good sized blues, but we couldn't keep the blues off our line to catch any freaking cobia. So we kind of put our heads together and we were like, hey, you guys want to stay around and, you know, hopefully catch cobia and continue to catch these blues, or would y'all like to go out to the tower and catch a trophy shark? A lot of big sharks out there. And they were like, yeah, let's go catch sharks. So we took off. It's 44 miles out of Lockwood Folly. I think the shortest distance is leaving out of like Southport. It's like 35, 36 miles, I think. So we get out to the tower. We checked the weather a million times, and there was going to be some weather coming in like at midnight. So we get out there, and there's about 5 or 6 other boats out there. I think there's like a couple of sport fishers. There's a couple more center consoles. We hook on to about a 600-pound tiger, and Matt is fighting it. And you know, we're out there for a little while, maybe an hour or so, And I start to look around, and all those boats that were there were gone. And I told Ryan, I was like, dude, I said, that weather might be coming in early. That might be why they left. Maybe we should head back. I don't remember if we broke the shark off on purpose, or maybe the shark had, I don't remember if it just broke off. But anyways, we started heading back. We went over the shoals. You know, if anybody knows anything about the Frying Pan Tower, it's out there to protect Allied ships in the war, to warn them about the shoals. I want to say around the tower, like off the shoals, you're probably 65, 67 feet deep, I think. But directly on top of the shoals, you're only 20 feet deep, 20 something feet deep. So we're coming back, and this weather hits us before we get out of sight of the tower. So we got a 30 to 40 mile trek, you know, in snot. It's getting ugly. It's getting ugly quick. Sky's black. It's not raining yet, I don't think, but the sky's black. The wind is up, and the dominant period is just shrinking quickly. Off the shoals in the deeper water, I'm sure it was nowhere near as rough, but us being over top of those shoals intensified the waves. When we were in the trough, you could look at the graph, and we were in less than 10 feet of water a lot. I'm talking 6, 7 feet deep. Normally the shoals are 20 plus. We're in 6 or 7 feet in the trough coming back. So if that tells you anything, how big the waves were. And I'm on the throttle. I mean, it's just constant. And I know as hard as I'm gonna have to work this throttle, this quarter tank of gas is not gonna get us back to Lockwood. We're gonna have to make a beeline over the shoals to Southport Oak Island, where the Cape Fear River comes out, and we're gonna have to take the ICW back up to Lockwood. That's the only way. I mean, because the worst thing you can do out there is lose power. That is the worst thing you can do. And you know, that's what's really more important than anything, is reliable power. You know, that's why these offshore boats have twins, you know, triples, quadruple engines on them, is safety. You know, we were doing this in a single engine boat. You know, and on this trip we were in a single engine boat, and he had a Yamaha 152 stroke, very reliable engine, very reliable outboard. But we didn't have the fuel to make it back to Lockwood Folly, so we had to stay on the shoals, make a beeline towards Southport Oak Island. So we're headed back, constantly working the throttle, constantly working the throttle. It's scary. It's scary. You know, I'm trying to stay on the backs of the waves. You know, there are times when I'm having to, I got a wave pushing me, you know, I'm getting ready to slam into the trough. I got another wave, and I'm having to constantly work the throttle. When we got to the mouth of the Cape Fear River, it looked like the perfect storm. I mean, the ocean was black. The white caps were like highlighted. You guys know what I'm talking about. That was a scary experience. And the thing is, like, part of me wanted to never go offshore again. Wanted to never, I mean, that scared me so bad. I didn't want to, and that wasn't the only time I've been scared. There's been many a times I've been just as scared as that time. And every time I would be like, this is it. This is my last time. I'm done with this. But then I would go back, because I found myself falling in love with it. I was becoming passionate at it. You know, if you've never been offshore fishing, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you have, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. When a wahoo hits your bait going 30 miles an hour in the opposite direction, there's nothing like it. When you got a fish on, and you can lose that fish by one click of the drag. I mean, it takes a lot of skill to land a lot of these pelagic fish out there. Now, I'm no expert. You know, we experimented with a lot of different things. We loved marauders, we loved islanders, we loved using teasers. We logged a lot of hours in just 3 or 4 years. We were never really that great. We had some good days on some bull dolphin, but You know, there was a lot of onesie twosie trips, but we did catch a lot of really good fish. You know, yellowfin tuna, grouper. You have to just do it. It's just like anything else. You just got to do it. I've thought about wanting to get a boat that's more suitable for catfishing, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I mean, I love, once you have a boat with a lot of freeboard like mine, and you know, it only being 20 feet, it's very trailerable. I think dry, my boat only weighs 2,300 pounds. That's of course without the outboard, without the trailer, without the T-top. My cousin had bought a $2,500 Coastal Commander. It's a life raft. You just toss it in the water, it would explode into a life raft with a roof on it, with a beacon on the top of the roof. It had like first aid kits on it. It was really nice. We had an EPIRB. We had CETO. You know, we had all the basic safety equipment. You know, we carried extra fuel with us. You know, my boat only holds 55 gallons. And so we would always carry an extra 14 gallon and an extra 10 gallons of fuel with us. You know, so we didn't have a lot of room, you know, when we did that. But, you know, that's what we had to do. We didn't necessarily use all that fuel every time, but we wanted to play it safe. You know, we used the thirds method. I would probably still do small offshore fishing if I had a reliable outboard on my boat, but since the Mercury blew up and I bought the boat from my cousin, I bought an old Johnson off Craigslist, an old OMC 98 model 150. The outboard's been, you know, running. It's been getting the job done for me, you know, locally, you know, catfishing and striper fishing around here. But, you know, I just, I wouldn't want to take it offshore anymore. Not with that engine on it. If you lose power, you know, it's good to have a sea anchor. You know, it's basically a drift sock. Same thing we use for dragging for striper to slow our boats down, or keep dragging for catfish. It's basically the same thing. You know, it'll have it on the ready when you're offshore fishing. You know, if you get in some rough seas, you know where it's at. You can toss it out. It's going to help keep your bow toward the waves, the swells, so you help prevent you from capsizing. You don't want to take one on the side. You know, you might be able to get away with one on the side, but you know, you better be for doing something, because that second one is probably going to take you out. I just wanted to kind of go over some of my my offshore fishing. I am 100% retired from. I was, like I said, I was never that good at it, you know, but my cousin and I, we loved it. And we did the best we could, and we learned from experience. We did everything ourselves. You know, got ourselves into situations and we learned from them. And I'm glad that he got me into that. I'm glad that, you know, because it's nice knowing how to rig a ballyhoo. It's nice knowing how to, you know, go out and catch these fish. You know, how fast to troll and what type of lures to use, what type of rigs to use, what type of you know, shock leaders you need, you know, cigar weights, and just the complexity of everything. You know, it's so weird because you're out there trolling, like you're trolling ballyhoo, and you know, anybody conventional wisdom would tell you that's not going to work. I mean, you're trolling 6 miles an hour with ballyhoo skidding on top of the water. How's that going to catch anything? But it's a completely different world out there, completely different tactics, completely different techniques. It's so fun though. I mean, when you're out there, man, that water it's bluer than this background behind me. It's there's nothing like it. You know, I mean, I'll tell you how dumb I was. I would go swimming out there. Would be 80 miles offshore on the blue water, you know, 150, 200 feet deep, and I'm jumping off the boat swimming. Did it for a few years, and I really don't see myself doing it anymore. I have fallen in love with the Arkansas blue catfish and the mighty flathead, and I like pursuing them. And I hope I'm not coming off trying to sound like I'm a know-it-all, because I'm not. but I have tried to do different things, and I may not have been the most successful at them, but I have done them. I tried them. So, and my cousin did too, and we have those memories for the rest of our lives. We don't have a lot of video of it. I remember my cousin's dad bought him a GoPro Hero, I think it was the second one that ever come out. And man, we just thought we were going to start making GoPro videos. And man, I tried to use that thing. I had no idea how to use it. We never did use it. Never even got used. I think I ended up using it for like catfish videos years later. It's a dangerous sport, but it can be very rewarding. But I'd just rather go down here to Lake Wylie and catch me a big old blue catfish. Or I would love to go to Decatur. I'd love to fish Wheeler. I'd love to fish the James some more. I've fished the James River 3 times for blues. Still haven't caught a giant. I'm probably the only guy that's ever been to the James 3 times and haven't caught a fish over 50 pounds. But I went twice by myself, and then Jared was with me one time. And then I went with a couple of guys from work. We got a guide and went out. We got skunked with the guide. So, how do you get skunked on the James is beyond me, but yeah. I didn't really want to go with a guide because, all the guide did was what I did when I went. I mean, all I've ever done on the James is basically buoy hop. I mean, it's a tidal river. The current's changing directions every 6 hours, and you one anchor snaps you tight and fan cast out. I'd done my homework before I went the first time, so I pretty much had everything I needed. I'm throwing up to 16 ounces of weight off the side of the boat. I mean, you got to. The tide's so strong. And I kind of would taper the weight down as I got toward the transom. There were several up in the 20-pound range, but just never could land that big one, never could get that big one. A friend of mine had just went before I did, and he caught a 90. And, there's a lot of, 50 to 70s are common on the James River. I don't know why you don't see more 100 plus coming off the James River. Seems like you would. As many 50 to 70s as they have coming out of there, it looks like you would see more 100-pounders coming out of there, 90, 100-pounders. But, it's probably the same reason Lake Wylie doesn't really produce much over 50 to 60. I think once you get so many in that size range, maybe it has something, maybe some of those 50 to 70s in the James need to be harvested. That's probably not it, but it's got to be something. There's got to be some science behind it. Maybe it's the current. Maybe they're having to work. I know when I striper fished, freshwater stripers, like landlocked stripers, not when they go up in the bay, up into the rivers, not those freshwater, because those are still saltwater stripers. But I'm talking about landlocked stripers, like in the lakes. Those bigger stripers in lakes tend to be shorter and fatter. Whereas like the stripers in saltwater tend to be like more lean, longer. Like a 50-pound striper in Tennessee would be a lot fatter and shorter than a 50-pound striper in the ocean. They tend to be longer and more muscular. So maybe that's it with the James. Maybe they're just not able to get like fat enough. Maybe they get longer and stronger and like lean. They stay leaner, more lean. I don't know. But I'd like to go there. I've fished Santee several times for catfish. Caught some 30-pounders. I hadn't caught any trophies out of Santee. Really, the only trophy catfish that I've caught I'm pretty sure have all come out of Wylie. I probably well, not by myself, but fishing with friends, I'm sure I've caught at least a dozen around the 50-pound mark, close to it or a little over. My personal best was 62 pounds, I think it was. Well, that's the one that I weighed. I did catch one that I think was potentially bigger than that one, but I didn't weigh it. But I released all of them. And it's just nice to have. I mean, the blue catfish kind of saved me. I mean, because I like big fish. And really, locally, that's as big as it's going to get, is the North American blue catfish. I mean, and the flathead. It really doesn't get any bigger than that around here. You know, you can travel a little ways and get on some freshwater alligator gar or something like that, some sturgeon maybe. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would love to do. I would love to go fishing in Hawaii. I would love to go fish in Panama. I'd love to catch a Wells catfish. I'd love to catch a Goliath grouper. There's a lot of different things that I still want to do.